The moment unfolded far from cameras, in controlled airspace that both sides insisted was routine. A pair of Russian combat aircraft were flying a pre-briefed route, engines steady, radios quiet, sensors scanning more out of habit than urgency. Nothing about the flight plan suggested danger. No declared hostility. No weapons release warnings. No scramble orders. And yet, somewhere beyond the horizon, a powerful ground-based radar had already found them. The American Patriot air defense system was never designed to shout its presence. Its strength lies in silent geometry, phased array radar energy shaping the sky into searchable volumes, building tracks from faint reflections most pilots never notice. As the Russian jets crossed into the edge of that radar's coverage, the system did what it was built to do. Classified, correlated, followed. At roughly 60 miles, the aircraft were no longer anonymous returns on a distant scope. They were precise tracks with speed, altitude, heading, and identity assessments constantly updating inside a sealed command shelter. To the Patriot operators, this was procedural. The N/MPQ series radar can track well over 100 targets simultaneously, guiding interceptors while maintaining a wide-area search. A long-range track does not mean a missile in the air, but it does mean something far more unsettling to a pilot. Attention. Modern air defense does not need to fire to exert pressure. When a system like Patriot transitions into a high-quality track, the targeted aircraft's radar warning receiver can register the shift. The tone changes. The symbology tightens. What was background noise becomes a focused beam. Inside the Russian cockpit, the change was unmistakable. The warning system indicated a surface-based engagement radar mode. Strong, stable, persistent. This was not a search sweep or incidental illumination. It was the electronic posture used when a missile battery prepares options. The aircraft were still dozens of miles from any theoretical intercept point, but distance no longer mattered. In air defense doctrine, the moment a system can guide a missile, it has already won a critical psychological battle. Russian pilots are trained to operate under threat. They fly near layered NATO air defenses regularly. But Patriot is not an S-125 relic or a legacy short-range system. It represents an integrated network tied into airborne sensors, national command authorities, and real-world combat experience. Its kill record, from Iraq to more recent conflicts, is known to every modern air force. When its radar locks, it is not a warning shot. It is a statement of control. No missile launched that day. No engagement occurred. But the encounter was not neutral. In modern air power clashes, dominance is often established long before weapons are fired. A 60-mile lock was enough to force decisions, alter routes, and remind everyone involved that in this battlespace, one side owned the sky's invisible architecture. For the Russian crews, the significance of the lock went far beyond the immediate flight. In modern aerial warfare, radar behavior communicates intent more clearly than radio calls ever could. A search radar scans broadly, touching everything and committing to nothing. A fire control quality track is different. It is selective, disciplined, and purposeful. It tells the pilot that someone on the ground has taken the time to isolate them from the rest of the sky and is now running the math required to destroy them. The Patriot system excels at that math. Unlike older Soviet-era surface-to-air missiles that relied on mechanically steered antennas and sequential target handling, Patriot's phased-array radar reshapes its beam electronically, shifting focus in microseconds without physically moving. This allows it to search, track, classify, and support engagements simultaneously. From a pilot's perspective, this creates an unsettling paradox. There is no visible missile launch, no smoke plume, no sudden spike that fades. There is only a steady, unwavering signal that does not blink, does not drift, and does not go away. Russian cockpit warning systems are optimized for survival against layered defenses. They distinguish between early warning radars, acquisition radars, and engagement radars. Each category demands a different response. What appeared on the displays during this encounter fell into the most serious category. The signal strength and coherence suggested a system capable of mid-course guidance at extreme ranges. This meant that even evasive maneuvers or electronic countermeasures would not guarantee safety if the situation escalated. Patriot interceptors are designed to receive continuous updates from the radar, correcting their flight path dynamically as a target maneuvers. From the ground commander's standpoint, this was not about firing a missile. It was about enforcing an invisible boundary. Modern air defense doctrine emphasizes deterrence through demonstrated capability. By allowing the radar energy to be detected without escalating further, the battery announced that it was alert, operational, and confident. The message was calibrated. Cross this line, and the engagement process is already halfway complete. For the pilots, options narrowed quickly. Continuing on the same vector risked further escalation. Aggressive countermeasures could be interpreted as hostile intent. Turning away, however, carried its own psychological cost. In military aviation, altering course under a weapons-grade lock is an unspoken admission that control of the engagement belongs to someone else. This is how airspace dominance is asserted in the modern era. Not with dogfights or visible confrontations, but through sensor reach, processing speed, and disciplined restraint. No missiles were fired because none needed to be. The encounter had already delivered its lesson. What made the encounter especially destabilizing was the broader system behind the Patriot battery. Patriot is not a standalone weapon. By the time Russian pilots saw the warning indicators tighten, the track was likely already shared across a wider command and control network. Modern Patriot units are integrated through data links with airborne early warning aircraft, Allied radar sites, and higher echelon command nodes. This means a single ground radar lock is rarely just local awareness. It becomes part of a larger, fused picture of the airspace. From a doctrinal standpoint, this is where the balance tips. Russian air power doctrine historically emphasized penetrating defended zones using speed, altitude changes, and electronic countermeasures, betting on saturation and pilot initiative. Patriot was built to defeat exactly that approach. Its radar operates in bands optimized for precision tracking, and its interceptors, particularly later pack variants, are designed to engage fast, maneuvering targets at long distances with high probability of kill. Publicly acknowledged engagement ranges vary by missile type and scenario, but even conservative figures place effective engagement well beyond 50 miles against high-altitude aircraft. A lock at 60 miles was not symbolic. It was operationally credible. The psychological pressure was compounded by uncertainty. Pilots could not know how many interceptors were available, whether engagement authority had already been delegated, or if other systems were queued onto their position. Patriot doctrine allows rapid transition from track to launch once authorization is given. The timeline between decision and missile in the air can be measured in seconds, not minutes. In that window, there is very little a pilot can do besides break contact entirely. For Russian command, the incident highlighted an uncomfortable reality. Airspace that appears open on maps may, in practice, be dominated by sensors long before aircraft physically approach defended zones. Control is exerted through detection depth, not proximity. A fighter does not need to violate a boundary to be neutralized. It only needs to be seen clearly enough, early enough. Encounters like this rarely appear in official statements. They are classified as routine interactions, training overlaps, or navigational adjustments. But inside military staffs, they are studied carefully. They influence route planning, rules of engagement, and risk tolerance. They shape how often aircraft are dispatched and how close they are willing to operate near defended regions. No shots were fired, and no formal incident was recorded. Yet the message was unmistakable. One side demonstrated that it could see first, track first, and decide first. In modern air power competition, that sequence often determines outcomes long before a war begins. The episode also exposed a quiet asymmetry between how the two sides conceptualize air defense risk. For Russian tactical aviation, especially when operating near contested or politically sensitive airspace, survival has traditionally depended on mobility. Speed, altitude variation, terrain masking, and electronic attack are used to complicate the defender's targeting problem. These methods are effective against systems that must mechanically search, hand off targets, or commit sequentially. Against a networked, digitally steered system like Patriot, those advantages erode rapidly. Patriot's strength is not that it is invulnerable, but that it compresses time. Its radar does not need to pause, reposition, or narrow its focus in obvious ways. It reshapes its beam on demand, allocating energy precisely where it is needed. This allows a battery to maintain continuous surveillance while simultaneously preparing engagements. From the cockpit, this collapses the warning timeline. There is no gradual escalation from detection to threat. The aircraft simply transitions from being observed to being actionable. Russian planners are acutely aware of this vulnerability. In recent years, official doctrine has increasingly emphasized standoff weapons and layered support rather than direct exposure to advanced air defenses. Long-range air-launched missiles, electronic warfare aircraft, and forward reconnaissance assets are meant to reduce the need for manned aircraft to approach defended zones at all. Encounters like the Patriot lock reinforce why that shift has occurred. When a ground-based system can establish a weapons-grade track before a fighter's own sensors can confidently map the threat environment, initiative is lost. The pilots themselves would have recognized the deeper implication. Patriot does not operate in isolation. If the radar can see them, other systems can be cued as well. Fighters on combat air patrol, airborne warning aircraft, and additional surface-to-air systems can be fed the same track data. Even disengaging does not guarantee immediate anonymity. Once a high-quality track exists, it lingers in the network, informing predictions about future routes and behavior. This is how deterrence is enforced without confrontation. No airspace violation is required. No missile is launched. The mere demonstration of reach and coherence reshapes behavior. Routes are adjusted, altitudes change, and mission planners become more conservative. Over time, these adjustments accumulate into strategic effect. For Russian aviation, the lesson was blunt. Airspace dominance no longer begins at borders or declared exclusion zones. It begins wherever advanced sensors can establish control. The Patriot lock was not an act of aggression. It was a reminder that in a modern battlespace, visibility is power, and the side that owns the sensors defines the limits of movement. What makes incidents like this especially dangerous is how easily they can be misread. In tightly managed Cold War-era confrontations, escalation pathways were slower and more visible. Interceptors launched, missiles armed, radars switched modes in predictable sequences. Today, the technology collapses those steps. A radar lock can appear aggressive even when no engagement is intended, while a pilot's defensive reaction can look hostile from the ground. The margin for miscalculation is thinner than most public discussions acknowledge. From the American side, Patriot crews are trained to operate under strict rules of engagement. Identification, tracking quality, and command authorization are layered deliberately to prevent accidental escalation. A long-range lock does not automatically mean intent to fire. It means readiness. It is a posture that signals capability while preserving restraint. But that distinction exists primarily inside command shelters and doctrine manuals. In the cockpit of an opposing aircraft, the signal feels the same regardless of intent. Russian commanders understand this dynamic as well. Their doctrine places significant emphasis on avoiding situations where tactical pilots must make strategic decisions under time pressure. A radar lock from a modern air defense system forces exactly that scenario. The pilot must choose whether to press on, withdraw, or take countermeasures, all without full knowledge of the defender's intent. That uncertainty is corrosive. It shifts initiative upward, away from the aircrew and toward ground-based systems and political authorities. These encounters also feed broader strategic calculations. Air defense systems like Patriot are increasingly deployed not just to protect fixed assets, but to shape regional airspace behavior. Their presence influences where patrols fly, how reconnaissance is conducted, and how aggressively military aircraft probe contested areas. The system becomes a tool of signaling as much as defense. No official statements dramatized this incident. That silence is intentional. Public acknowledgement would force explanations neither side wants to give. But inside operational planning circles, moments like this matter. They are cataloged, analyzed, and quietly incorporated into future decisions. In the end, the Patriot lock was not about a single flight. It was about demonstrating who controls the unseen layers of the airspace. No missile needed to launch because the message was already delivered. The radar did its job, and both sides adjusted accordingly, knowing that next time, the line between warning and war could be far thinner. Moments like this rarely leave physical wreckage, but they leave impressions that shape doctrine long after the radar screens go dark. For the Russian pilots involved, the encounter reinforced a reality that modern air forces have been grappling with for decades. The decisive phase of air combat increasingly happens before anyone pulls a trigger. Detection depth, track quality, and network integration now define the battlespace more than speed or maneuver alone. For the United States and its allies, systems like Patriot represent a deliberate evolution away from reactive defense toward proactive control. The goal is no longer simply to intercept what crosses a line, but to make that line psychologically and operationally expensive to approach. A 60-mile lock achieves that without the risks inherent in missile launches or air-to-air intercepts. It asserts presence while preserving escalation dominance, forcing the opposing side to absorb the risk and make the next move. From a strategic perspective, this dynamic echoes earlier Cold War confrontations, but with a crucial difference. Then, warning often came from visual confirmation or clearly staged escalation. Now, the warning arrives as an electronic whisper. Precise, persistent, and impossible to ignore. It compresses decision-making timelines and shifts leverage toward whoever controls the most advanced sensing and processing infrastructure. Incidents like this also underscore why modern military competition is increasingly focused on systems rather than platforms. The aircraft in the sky matter, but what matters more is the invisible architecture supporting them. Radars, data links, command networks, and doctrine. The side that sees first understands first, and decides first rarely needs to fire at all. No official communique will ever describe the tension inside those cockpits or the calculations inside the Patriot command shelter. But both sides understood what happened. A boundary was tested, measured, and enforced without violence. That is how power is exercised in the current era, not loudly but unmistakably. If you want to understand how these unseen confrontations shape real-world military balance, stay with the channel. Like the video, subscribe, and join us as we examine the systems, doctrines, and quiet encounters that define modern warfare long before the first shot is fired.